In the darkest corner of space, where even starlight fears to travel, something impossible happened. A human girl with nothing but a basic medical kit looked into the dying eyes of a creature that could have incinerated her with a single breath and chose compassion over fear. That single moment of kindness would shake the foundations of an entire galaxy, challenge ancient prejudices, and earn her a title that would echo through the stars for generations. This is not just the story of how Elena Martinez became known as the Holy Healer. It's the story of how one act of mercy changed the fate of countless worlds. What you're about to witness defies everything we thought we knew about dragons, about healing, and about the power that lies dormant in ordinary hearts. Some say it was luck. Others call it destiny. But those who were there that day know the truth. Sometimes the most extraordinary miracles come from the most ordinary people, armed with nothing more than determination and a willingness to help. Elena Martinez never expected her routine supply run to the outer colonies would change her life forever. As a junior medic aboard the cargo vessel Meridian's Hope, she spent most of her time checking inventory and treating minor injuries among the crew. Her small medical kit contained basic supplies, bandages, antiseptics, painkillers, and a few emergency medicines. Nothing fancy, nothing that would suggest she was destined for greatness. The trouble began 3 days into their journey to the mining colony of Zirian 7. The ship's navigation system detected an uncharted debris field floating in what should have been empty space. Captain Torres, a weathered man with more scars than patience, decided to investigate. Salvage rights could mean good money for the crew, and times have been hard lately. "Elena, get your kit ready," Torres called over the intercom. "We're going aboard whatever's left of that ship." The debris field turned out to be the remains of a massive vessel, unlike anything Elena had seen before. The hull was made of some kind of crystalline material that seemed to shift colors in the starlight. Strange symbols covered every surface, and the ship's design looked organic rather than manufactured. "I've never seen anything like this," whispered Jake, the ship's engineer, as they suited up for the boarding operation. "The scans are showing some kind of life sign inside, but it's fading fast." Elena's hands trembled slightly as she checked her medical kit one last time. The standard supplies felt inadequate for whatever they might find inside an alien vessel. But she had taken an oath to help those in need, no matter who they were or where they came from. The airlock hissed open, and Elena followed Captain Torres and 2 other crew members into the strange ship. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls, which seemed to pulse with a faint inner glow. The air was breathable, but felt heavy, almost electric. They followed the life signs deeper into the vessel, through corridors that seemed to have grown rather than been built. The walls curved in impossible ways, and Elena found herself fighting motion sickness as they navigated the alien architecture. "This way," Torres grunted, consulting his scanner. "Whatever's alive in here, it's not going to last much longer." They emerged into a vast chamber at the heart of the ship. Elena gasped as she saw what waited for them there. Lying in the center of the room was a creature that belonged in legends and fairy tales, not drifting dead in space. A dragon. It was magnificent and terrible at the same time. Its scales shifted from deep purple to silver as the emergency lights played across its massive form. The creature was easily 30 feet long, with wings that could have blotted out the sun. But those wings were torn and bloody, and one of its legs was bent at an unnatural angle. "Dear God," whispered one of the crew members, "is that thing real?" The dragon's massive head lifted slightly, and Elena found herself staring into eyes like liquid gold. There was intelligence there, and pain, and something that might have been hope. The creature tried to speak, but only managed a weak rumble that felt like distant thunder. "It's dying," Elena said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "The scans show massive internal bleeding and multiple fractures. We need to get out of here," Torres said, backing toward the entrance. "That thing could kill us all if it decides we're threats." But Elena was already moving forward, her medical training overriding her fear. The dragon watched her approach with those golden eyes, making no aggressive moves despite its obvious pain. She could see a deep gash along its side where something had torn through the scales and into the flesh beneath. "Easy," she murmured, the same tone she used with frightened patience. "I'm here to help." The dragon's eyes widened with what looked like surprise. It lowered its head slightly, and Elena took that as permission to continue. Her hands were shaking as she opened her medical kit, but she forced herself to focus on what needed to be done. The wound was massive, easily 3 feet long, and deep enough that she could see the creature's ribs. By any medical standard, the dragon should have been dead already, but somehow it was holding on. Elena began by cleaning the wound with antiseptic, working as gently as she could. The dragon winced but didn't pull away, seeming to understand that she was trying to help. The cleaning solution turned red almost immediately, and Elena realized she was dealing with blood loss that would have killed a dozen humans. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. Her basic medical kit was designed for human injuries, not wounds that could house a small car. She worked methodically, cleaning debris from the gash and trying to stop the bleeding with pressure bandages. The dragon's blood was unlike anything she had ever seen. It seemed to glow with its own inner light, and it was warm enough that steam rose from the bandages as she worked. The creature's breathing was labored but steady as Elena moved to examine the broken leg. The bone was shattered in several places, and she knew there was no way her simple splints would be adequate. But she had to try. "This is going to hurt," she warned, though she wasn't sure the dragon understood her words. But it seemed to understand her intent, bracing itself as she carefully aligned the broken bones. The dragon's roar of pain echoed through the chamber, so loud that Elena's ears rang. For a moment, she thought the creature might lash out at her. Instead, it gently nudged her with its snout, a gesture that felt like gratitude. Elena worked for hours, using every bandage and medicine in her kit. She stitched what could be stitched, splinted what could be splinted, and administered painkillers that she hoped would work on dragon physiology. Her supplies were pitifully inadequate for such massive injuries, but she did everything she could think of. The other crew members had long since returned to their ship, but Elena refused to leave. Something about the dragon's eyes told her that it understood what she was doing and that it was grateful for her efforts. There was an ancient wisdom in those golden orbs and a sadness that seemed to carry the weight of ages. As she worked, Elena found herself talking to the creature. She told it about her training as a medic, about her dreams of helping people across the galaxy, about her fears and hopes. The dragon listened with obvious attention, occasionally making soft rumbling sounds that felt almost like responses. "I don't know if this will work," she admitted as she applied the last of her bandages to a smaller wound on the dragon's wing. "My supplies were meant for humans, not for someone like you. But I've done everything I can." The dragon lifted its great head and looked directly into her eyes. For a moment, Elena felt something pass between them, not words, but understanding. The creature was thanking her, not just for the medical treatment, but for seeing it as more than a monster to be feared. Suddenly, the dragon's scales began to glow more brightly. The light spread from its chest outward, washing over Elena in waves of warmth. She gasped as she felt something incredible happening. The creature was healing itself, using her basic medical treatment as a foundation for something far more powerful. The gashes closed, leaving only faint silver scars. The broken bones straightened and fused. The torn wing membranes regenerated before her eyes. But the most amazing change was in the dragon's eyes. The pain was gone, replaced by something that looked like wonder. Elena stumbled backward, overwhelmed by what she had witnessed. The dragon rose to its full height, magnificent and powerful once again. For a terrifying moment, she wondered if she had made a mistake. This creature could destroy her ship with a single blast of flame. Instead, the dragon bowed its great head to her, a gesture of respect and gratitude that brought tears to her eyes. When it spoke, its voice resonated through her mind rather than her ears. Little healer, the voice was ancient and warm like the sound of wind through mountain peaks. You have given me more than my life back. You have shown me that there is still compassion in this galaxy, even for one such as I. Elena could barely speak. I just did what anyone would do. The dragon's laughter was like distant thunder, but warm rather than threatening. No, child. What you did was extraordinary. You looked upon a creature that most would fear, and you chose to heal rather than harm. You will go far in this galaxy, little healer. Farther than you can possibly imagine. The creature moved toward a section of the wall, which dilated like an iris to reveal stars beyond. I must return to my people, but I will not forget what you have done for me. Nor will they. Before Elena could respond, the dragon spread its mighty wings and launched itself into space. She watched through the opening as it flew away, its scales glowing like a small star against the darkness. Only then did she notice that her medical kit was glowing with the same soft light. When she opened it, Elena gasped. Every supply had been replenished, but they were different now. The bandages seemed to shimmer with healing energy. The medicines glowed with inner fire. Even her simple instruments had been transformed into something beyond human understanding. Captain Torres found her there an hour later, staring at her transformed medical kit in wonder. "What happened here, Doc?" he asked, looking around the empty chamber. The life signs just disappeared. Elena closed her kit carefully, still trying to process what had occurred. "I helped someone who needed help," she said simply, "and I think my life just changed forever." She had no idea how right she was. Word of what had happened aboard that alien vessel would spread through the galaxy like wildfire. And Elena Martinez, armed with nothing more than compassion and a transformed medical kit, was about to discover that some good deeds echo across the stars in ways beyond imagining. The dragon kept its word. Elena's actions had not gone unnoticed, and soon she would find herself drawn into conflicts and adventures that would test not only her medical skills, but her courage and her commitment to helping others. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of ancient grudges and terrible secrets. But for now, Elena simply returned to her quarters aboard the Meridian's Hope, holding her glowing medical kit close to her chest and wondering what tomorrow would bring. She fell asleep to dreams of golden eyes and voices like distant thunder, unaware that her name was already being whispered in reverent tones in places where dragons gathered to share their ancient wisdom. The transformation had begun. Elena Martinez was no longer just a junior medic on a cargo ship. She was something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. She was a bridge between species, a healer who could work miracles with the simplest tools, a human who had earned the respect and gratitude of one of the most ancient and powerful races in the universe. And this was only the beginning point 3 weeks after the encounter with the dragon. Elena's life aboard the Meridian's Hope had settled into a new routine. Her transformed medical kit had proven itself time and again, healing injuries that should have required surgery with nothing more than a touch of her glowing bandages. Word was spreading among the crew that their medic had somehow become extraordinary. Elena was in the middle of treating Chief Engineer Ramirez's plasma burn when the ship's communication array crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything any of them had ever heard, deep and resonant, with harmonics that seemed to vibrate in their bones. "Cargo Vessel Meridian's Hope, this is Drachmer of the Stellar Conclave. We request permission to come aboard. We seek the one called Elena Martinez." Captain Torres nearly choked on his coffee. The Stellar Conclave was legendary, an organization so ancient and powerful that most people weren't even sure it really existed. And now they were asking for his junior medic. "Elena," Torres called over the intercom. "You need to get to the bridge. Now." Elena finished bandaging Ramirez's arm, watching in satisfaction as the wound closed completely within seconds. The plasma burn that should have left permanent scars was already nothing more than smooth, healthy skin. She made her way to the bridge, her transformed medical kit slung over her shoulder. The view screen showed a ship that defied description. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, with flowing lines and surfaces that seemed to shift and change as Elena watched. The vessel was massive, easily 10 times the size of their cargo ship, and it radiated power that made the space around it shimmer. Elena Martinez, the voice continued, somehow knowing she had arrived on the bridge. I am Drachmer, whom you healed 3 weeks ago. I come with a request from the highest councils of my people. Elena's heart raced as she realized she was speaking to the dragon she had saved. But how is he aboard that ship? And what did he want with her? Drachmer, she said, stepping closer to the communication console. Are you all right? Your injuries are completely healed, thanks to your skill and compassion. Drachmer's voice warmed with obvious affection. But I do not contact you to discuss my health. The galaxy has need of your gifts, Elena Martinez. There is a plague spreading through the Outer Rim territories, something that conventional medicine cannot touch. Millions will die without intervention. Torres looked at Elena with concern. Doc, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. We can refuse this request. But Elena was already thinking about the implications. A plague that conventional medicine couldn't touch meant suffering on an unimaginable scale. If her transformed abilities could help, how could she refuse? What kind of plague? She asked. The Crimson Death, Drachmer replied, and Elena heard several of her crewmates gasp. Even she had heard whispers of this disease, a rapidly spreading infection that turned victims into mindless husks before killing them within days. It started on the mining world of Kethra Prime and has already spread to 7 systems. The planetary governments are in chaos, and the death toll rises by the hour. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. What makes you think I can help where others have failed? Because you carry the gift now, Drachmer explained. When you chose to heal me rather than fear me, you awakened something that has been dormant in your species for millennia. The dragons remember the old songs, the stories of humans who could work miracles of healing. We thought such beings were lost forever, until you proved us wrong. The bridge fell silent as everyone processed this information. Elena stared at her medical kit, wondering what she had truly become that night in the alien ship. There's something else, Drachmer continued. The plague is not natural. Someone or something created it deliberately, and they're using it to destabilize entire star systems. Your healing abilities may be the only thing standing between the galaxy and catastrophe. Elena closed her eyes, thinking of all the innocent people who would die if she refused this call. When she opened them again, her decision was clear. I'll come with you, she said. But I need my medical supplies, and she looked around at her crewmates. I'd like to bring my team if they're willing. To her surprise, the entire crew of the Meridian's Hope volunteered to join the mission. Even Captain Torres, who had been planning to retire after this run, insisted on coming along. The transfer to Drachmer's ship was unlike anything Elena had experienced. The vessel's interior was a marvel of organic architecture, with corridors that seemed to breathe and walls that pulsed with gentle bioluminescence. Drachmer himself was even more impressive in person than he had been as a dying creature. His scales shimmered with health and vitality, and his presence filled the spaces around him with an aura of ancient wisdom and power. Your ship, Elena marveled as he led them through curved hallways lined with what looked like living crystal. It's incredible. This is Vathis, a living vessel grown by our finest shapers over the course of centuries, Drachmer explained. She will carry us swiftly to where we are needed. But first, you must understand the full scope of what you have agreed to face. He led them to a circular chamber at the heart of the ship, where the walls displayed holographic images of infected worlds. Elena watched in horror as the recordings showed once thriving cities reduced to silent graveyards, their populations either dead or fled. The Crimson Death begins as a simple respiratory infection, Drachmer explained as the images shifted to show victims in various stages of the disease. But Within hours, it attacks the nervous system, causing madness and violent behavior. The infected become mindless predators, attacking anyone they encounter. Death follows within days, but not before the victim spreads the infection to dozens of others. Elena studied the medical data that scrolled alongside the images. The disease was unlike anything in the medical literature. It seemed to adapt to every treatment, mutating faster than any known pathogen should be able to. You said it was created deliberately, she said. By whom? Drachmer's expression darkened. We have suspicions, but no proof. There are forces in this galaxy that benefit from chaos and suffering. The collapse of planetary governments creates opportunities for those who trade in misery. Over the next 2 days, as Vathis carried them toward the infected systems at speeds that should have been impossible, Elena worked with Drachmer and his people to understand everything they could about the plague. The Dragon's ship carried an extensive medical database, and Elena found herself learning about diseases and treatments from dozens of different species. Her transformed medical kit proved to be even more remarkable than she had realized. The instruments could analyze any biological sample instantly, providing detailed information about pathogens, genetic markers, and treatment options. The medicines seemed to adapt themselves to whatever was needed, and the bandages could deliver precisely calculated doses of healing compounds directly through the skin. But most importantly, Elena discovered that her own understanding of medicine had been fundamentally changed. She could see patterns in the disease data that should have taken teams of experts months to recognize. Solutions that would have required years of research came to her in moments of intuitive clarity. Your gift is not just in the tools, Drachmer observed as he watched her work. It is in how you think, how you see the connections between all living things. This is what makes you truly extraordinary. Their first stop was Kethra Prime, the mining world where the plague had originated. The planet's surface was dotted with massive excavation sites and industrial complexes, but now everything was eerily silent. Orbital scans showed thousands of life signs, but they were concentrated in heavily fortified quarantine zones. The situation is worse than we expected, Elena said, reviewing the latest reports. The planet's government has collapsed completely. The survivors are trapped in scattered settlements, running out of food and supplies. And the infected, she shuddered as she read the casualty reports. The infected have formed hunting packs, Drachmer finished grimly. They retain enough intelligence to coordinate their attacks, but no trace of their former humanity. They're spreading the disease faster than anyone thought possible. Elena squared her shoulders, feeling the weight of her transformed medical kit. Then we'd better get down there and start saving lives. The descent to Kethra Prime's surface was harrowing. Vathis had to navigate through a debris field of destroyed ships and orbital platforms. The planet's communication networks had mostly failed, leaving them to rely on emergency beacons to locate the surviving population centers. Their first destination was New Hadley, a mining town that had managed to maintain its quarantine barriers. The settlement was surrounded by high walls topped with energy shields, and the streets inside were patrolled by heavily armed security forces. Elena and her team, accompanied by Drachmer in his human-appearing form, made their way to the settlement's medical facility. What they found there broke Elena's heart. The hospital was overflowing with patients in various stages of the Crimson Death, and the medical staff looked exhausted and hopeless. Dr. Martinez, the chief medical officer, a haggard woman named Dr. Sarah Chun, greeted them with obvious desperation. "Thank God you're here. We've lost 12 staff members to the infection, and we're completely out of antiviral medications. The disease doesn't respond to anything we've tried." Elena opened her transformed medical kit, and the soft glow that emanated from within immediately caught Dr. Chen's attention. "I need to examine some of your patients," Elena said, "and I'll need samples of the pathogen for analysis." What Elena discovered in her examination horrified her. The Crimson Death was even more insidious than the reports had indicated. The pathogen didn't just attack the body. It seemed to target the victim's very soul, destroying their capacity for empathy and higher thought while leaving their basic survival instincts intact. It was a disease designed to create monsters. But as Elena worked, she began to see patterns that others had missed. The pathogen had one crucial weakness. It required a specific protein sequence to maintain its virulence. If she could disrupt that sequence, the disease would lose its ability to spread, and its victims might have a chance to recover. Working through the night, Elena used her transformed instruments to develop a treatment protocol that should counter the plague's effects. The medicines in her kit adapted themselves to the task, creating compounds that she had never seen before, but somehow knew would work. The first test came with Dr. Chin's most critical patient, a young girl who had been infected for over 48 hours and was already showing signs of the violent madness that characterized the disease's final stages. Elena applied her new treatment, watching nervously as the glowing bandages delivered their payload. The transformation was remarkable. Within minutes, the girl's fever broke. Her violent thrashing subsided, and her eyes cleared of the savage light that had burned there. She looked around the medical bay with confusion, but it was human confusion, not the mindless hunger of the infected. "My name is Sophie," she whispered, the first coherent word she had spoken in days. "Where am I? What happened to me?" Dr. Chun wept openly as she hugged the girl. "You're safe now, Sophie. You're going to be okay." Word of Elena's success spread quickly through the settlement and beyond. Within hours, refugees were streaming in from across the planet, desperate for treatment. Elena worked tirelessly, treating patient after patient with her miraculous medicines. Her crew pitched in however they could, helping to organize the influx of people and maintaining order in the chaos. But as they worked, Elena began to notice something disturbing. The plague hadn't spread randomly across Kethra Prime. The infection patterns showed clear signs of deliberate seeding, as if someone had released the pathogen in strategically chosen locations to maximize its impact. "This wasn't an accident," she told Drachmer as they reviewed the epidemiological data. "Someone released this disease deliberately, targeting the planet's most vulnerable populations first." Drachmer's expression was grim. "We suspected as much. The question is who would do such a thing, and why?" Their answer came sooner than expected. As Elena was treating a group of miners who had just arrived from the Northern Territories, alarms began blaring throughout the settlement. The settlement's defensive coordinator burst into the medical bay with urgent news. "Unknown ships entering the system," he reported. "They're broadcasting surrender demands and claiming ownership of the planet under salvage laws." Elena looked out through the medical bay's windows at the ships descending through the atmosphere. They were sleek, predatory-looking vessels bearing the markings of the Dominion Syndicate, a criminal organization known for its ruthless expansion tactics. "They're coming to claim the planet now that the population has been weakened," she realized with growing anger. "They created this plague to clear out the legitimate inhabitants." Drachmer stepped beside her, his human disguise flickering slightly as his true nature threatened to emerge. "Then, they have made a grave error in judgment. They have harmed innocents under the protection of the Stellar Conclave, and they have threatened the one we call the Holy Healer." Elena stared at him in shock. "The Holy Healer? It is what my people have begun to call you," Drachmer explained. Word of her deeds has spread through the dragon clans faster than thought itself. "You are under our protection now, Elena Martinez, and those who would harm you will face the consequences of their actions." As if summoned by his words, the sky above New Hadley began to fill with ships, not the predatory vessels of the Syndicate, but the organic, flowing forms of dragoncraft. Dozens of them, then hundreds, materializing out of hyperspace in a display of power that made the Syndicate fleet look like toys. Elena watched in awe as the two forces faced each other in the skies above the ravaged planet. The battle was about to begin, but she knew that this was only the start of something much larger. The galaxy had noticed her now, for better and for worse. The Holy Healer had work to do, The battle above Kethera Prime was unlike anything Elena had ever witnessed. The Dominion Syndicate's ships moved with military precision, their weapons cutting deadly arcs through space. But the Dragon vessels flowed like living things, dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid and striking back with beams of pure energy that seemed to burn with the fire of stars themselves. Elena found herself pressed against the medical bay window, watching the impossible dance of combat while continuing to treat patients. Her transformed medical kit had allowed her to heal over 300 people in the past 18 hours, but there were still thousands more who needed help. Elena. Drakmer's voice resonated in her mind, his mental connection clear even across the distance that separated them. I must join the battle, but you are not safe on the surface. The Syndicate has sent infiltration teams to capture you. Before Elena could respond, explosions rocked the settlement's outer defenses. Through the smoke and chaos, she could see armed figures advancing through the streets, cutting down anyone who stood in their way. The Syndicate soldiers moved with brutal efficiency, their goal clearly to reach the medical facility. Dr. Martinez, Captain Torres appeared at her side, a plasma rifle in his hands. We need to evacuate. My crew and I can hold them off, but not for long. Elena looked around the medical bay at the patients who still needed treatment. Many were children, their small bodies racked with fever as the Crimson Death ran its course. She couldn't abandon them now. I'm not leaving, she said firmly. These people need help, and I'm the only one who can provide it. Then we make our stand here, Torres replied, checking his weapon's charge. Jake, Ramirez, secure the entrances. Dr. Chun, get your mobile patients to the back rooms. The first wave of Syndicate soldiers reached the medical facility within minutes. Elena continued, working even as the sound of weapons fire echoed through the building. Her crew fought desperately to protect the patients, but they were vastly outnumbered. A Syndicate trooper burst through the main doors, his weapon aimed directly at Elena. Dr. Elena Martinez, you'll come with us immediately. Elena slowly turned from the child she was treating, her hands still glowing with the healing energy that flowed through her transformed instruments. I'm busy right now. These people need medical attention. The trooper's laugh was harsh and cold. These plague rats are already dead. You're coming with us to treat people who actually matter. Something inside Elena snapped at the casual dismissal of innocent lives. The glow around her hands intensified, and she felt power flowing through her unlike anything she had experienced before. No one is leaving this medical bay until every patient has been treated, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to echo from the walls themselves. The trooper raised his weapon, but before he could fire, something extraordinary happened. The very air around Elena began to shimmer, and a barrier of pure energy formed between her and the soldiers. Their weapons' fire struck the barrier and simply disappeared, absorbed into the swirling light. Impossible, the trooper muttered. You're just a human medic. She's far more than that, came a new voice from behind the soldiers. Elena turned to see a figure stepping through the main entrance, a woman who appeared human, but radiated power that made the air itself tremble. She is the holy healer chosen of the dragons, and she is under the protection of the stellar conclave. The woman moved with fluid grace, and Elena realized this was another dragon in human form. The Syndicate troopers opened fire on the newcomer, but their energy beams simply bent around her as if she existed in a different dimension. I am Serafina, the woman said as she effortlessly disarmed the soldiers with movements too fast to follow. I come bearing word from the highest councils. Elena Martinez, your reputation has spread far beyond what you might imagine. The galaxy watches what happens here today. As Serafina dealt with the remaining infiltrators, Elena returned to her work. The child she had been treating was finally responding to her medicines, the fever breaking as the plague lost its hold on his small body. She moved to the next patient, then the next, working with single-minded determination. The battle above goes well, Serafina reported as she secured the medical facility. But this attack on Kethra Prime is only the beginning. Our intelligence suggests that the Dominion Syndicate has released the Crimson Death on 17 different worlds. They plan to claim them all once the populations have been sufficiently weakened. Elena felt sick at the implications. 17 worlds. Millions of innocent people facing the same horrible fate she had witnessed here. We have to stop them. That is exactly what the Conclave intends, Serafina replied. But we need your help. Your healing abilities are the only effective treatment for the plague, and time is running short. Some of the infected worlds have only days before total societal collapse. The magnitude of the task ahead was staggering. Elena looked at her medical kit, tried to imagine how she could possibly treat the populations of entire planets. I'm only one person. Even with my abilities, I can't be in 17 places at once. Perhaps you cannot, Serafina said with a mysterious smile. But your gift is not limited to direct healing. The dragons have been studying the energy patterns you generate, and we believe there may be ways to amplify and distribute your abilities. Over the next several hours, as the battle in space concluded with the complete destruction of the Syndicate fleet, Elena learned more about the true scope of her transformation. According to Serafina, her healing abilities operated on quantum levels, manipulating the fundamental forces that govern biological systems. With the right amplification technology, those manipulations could be broadcast across entire star systems. The process is not without risk, Serafina warned as they prepared to leave Kethra Prime. Amplifying your abilities to such levels could burn out your neural pathways or worse. But the alternative is the death of billions. Elena didn't hesitate. Show me what I need to do. Their next destination was the ancient dragon stronghold of Drachmathes, a world hidden in a nebula so dense that few other species had ever found it. Elena stared in wonder at the planet's surface as they descended through the colorful gases. Massive crystalline structures rose from continents that seemed to pulse with their own inner light, and creatures of impossible size and beauty soared through skies that shifted between a dozen different colors. "Welcome to the heart of our civilization," Drachmer said as he met them at the landing platform. He was back in his true form, magnificent and terrible in the light of Drachmathes' twin sons. What you will see here, few non-dragons have ever witnessed. Elena was led through halls carved from living crystal, past chambers where ancient dragons worked on projects that defied human understanding. The technology here was beyond anything she had imagined, devices that seemed to be grown rather than built, instruments that responded to thought as much as touch, and displays that showed information in ways that bypassed the conscious mind entirely. At the heart of the complex was a chamber that took Elena's breath away. The walls, floor, and ceiling were made of some kind of crystalline material that reflected and refracted light in impossible patterns. In the center of the room stood a device that looked like a tree made of pure energy, its branches reaching toward the vaulted ceiling and its roots disappearing into the floor below. The resonance amplifier, Drachmer explained, built over the course of millennia by our greatest technicians and shapers. It can take the quantum signature of your healing abilities and broadcast them across thousands of light years. Elena approached the device carefully, feeling the power that radiated from its crystalline structure. "How does it work?" "You need to interface directly with the amplifier," Serafina explained. "Your consciousness would merge temporarily with the device, allowing it to map and replicate your healing patterns. But the strain would be enormous. No human has ever attempted anything like this. Because no human has ever had abilities like mine," Elena replied. She thought of the children on Kethra Prime, of the millions of people suffering on 17 different worlds, and her decision crystallized. "I have to try." The preparation process took hours. Elena was connected to monitoring systems that would track her vital signs and neural activity throughout the procedure. Her crew insisted on staying nearby, despite the potential dangers. "Doc," Captain Torres said quietly as the final preparations were made. You don't have to do this. There might be other ways. Not in time to save everyone who needs saving, Elena replied. She squeezed his hand reassuringly. Besides, this is what I was meant to do. I can feel it. As Elena placed her hands on the resonance amplifier, she felt a connection forming unlike anything she had experienced before. The device wasn't just reading her abilities, it was learning from them, understanding the fundamental principles that governed her healing gift. The sensation was overwhelming. Elena felt her consciousness expanding, stretching across vast distances as the amplifier mapped the quantum patterns of her abilities. She could sense the infected worlds, could feel the suffering of millions of people across dozens of star systems. And then the amplification began. Elena's healing energy, multiplied a billionfold, swept outward from Drachmathes in waves that traveled faster than light itself. She felt her consciousness touch every infected person simultaneously, her transformed medical knowledge analyzing each case and prescribing precise treatments. On Kethera Prime, the remaining plague victims suddenly found their fevers breaking. On the agricultural world of Ceres Gamma, children who had been hours from death sat up in their beds with clear eyes and steady breathing. Across 17 star systems, the Crimson Death began to die. But the strain on Elena was enormous. She felt her human limitations pressing against the cosmic forces she was channeling, her neural pathways burning with energies they were never meant to carry. Elena. Drachmer's voice seemed to come from very far away. You must pull back. Your biological systems cannot sustain this level of output. But Elena could see something else through her expanded awareness, something that made her push harder despite the pain. The Dominion Syndicate's true plan was far worse than anyone had imagined. They weren't just trying to claim 17 worlds. They were preparing to release an even deadlier plague, one that would sterilize entire sectors of the galaxy to make room for their expansion. Using the last of her strength, Elena reached out through the amplifier's network and touched the Syndicate's biological weapons laboratories. Her healing energy reversed and focused neutralized every sample of their engineered diseases. The weapons that would have killed billions became harmless protein structures in seconds. The effort finally broke Elena's connection to the amplifier. She collapsed, her body racked with exhaustion and her mind reeling from the cosmic forces she had channeled. But as consciousness faded, she heard something that made her smile. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The plague was gone, completely. Not just stopped, but eradicated from every world it had touched. The Syndicate's biological weapons program had been destroyed, their laboratories rendered useless. And something else was happening. Elena's amplified healing energy had awakened dormant abilities in thousands of other humans across the galaxy. The Holy Healer has changed everything, she heard Seraphina saying as darkness closed over her vision. She has given her people a gift that will echo through the ages. Elena drifted into unconsciousness, knowing that her mission was far from over. The galaxy was vast and full of suffering, but now she was no longer alone in her calling to heal. Across countless worlds, other humans were discovering that they too carried the spark of extraordinary healing abilities. The Age of Miracles had begun.